Hello everyone, how are you this Friday afternoon UK time? Lovely to see you. I'm in Northern Ireland where it's getting dark outside. Can you see I've got my little spotlight there which I need to maybe brighten me up a bit. Hello, my name is Carl. Welcome to this webinar hosted here by the TEFL Org, where I am going to talk a little bit about English proficiency exams. I am also here to answer any questions you have about teaching English as a foreign language. Maybe you're wanting to become a TEFL teacher. Maybe you're already a TEFL teacher and have some questions that you want me to answer. Maybe you want to go and work somewhere around the world and you want to know if it's a good place to go. Will they accept you? Maybe you're looking for your first job. Anything at all that you have a question about in the field of teaching English as a foreign language, please put it in the chat. If you're on YouTube or if you're on Facebook, just put it into the live chat and I will try and answer it live on air, or if not, Alan, who is monitoring the chat, will answer it for you. Who am I? As I said, I'm Carl. I work as a teacher trainer here in Northern Ireland. Just last weekend, I did a practical course for a group of 10 people wanting to go and teach around the world. I spent a weekend with them and they've already started applying for some jobs, which is fantastic. I've been lucky enough to teach around the world in East Asia, Southeast Asia, Central Asia. I've taught in the Middle East. So any questions you have about that, please put them in chat. I can see already there's a lovely conversation going on in the chat, which is fantastic. Please say hello. Let us all know where you are in the world. I can see Ellen and Maria having a nice little chat to each other, finding some things that they've got in common on YouTube, which is fantastic. Please, everybody else, say hello. Let us know where you are in the world. Okay, so I'm going to get started by talking about English proficiency exams. As we go along, if you've got any experience, please put it in the chat. If you disagree with me or you agree with me, please put it in the chat as well. It's great to hear for everyone's experience. Hello, the hellos are coming in Brazil. Hello, Sean in Slovakia. Ariadne, I think that's pronounced, in Brazil. Fatia, hello. Sharonti, hello. You're all welcome to this talk. So, first of all, let me talk a little bit about in English exams in general. Okay, so what I would say to you is that if you're coming into the field of teaching English as a foreign language, probably the students that you will teach, whether they are kids, whether they are adults, and it might not be that you're teaching a specific exam English class, but those students will probably eventually take an English exam. So they might not take it with you. They might come to you and say, oh, I just want to generally learn English, which is fine. You would maybe teach them general English if they're adults. But eventually, probably, once they get to a certain level, they will take some sort of English proficiency exam. They will need to prove their English ability. And that is why most people around the world are taking English. It's to eventually take an exam or to take an exam that term that they are learning. Okay. So just keep that in mind, that eventually they will probably want to take an exam. Okay. So I'm just going to give you some annual numbers of the amount of people that take exams around the world to try and show you how important they are. Okay. And this is not all, I'm not in these numbers. I'm not going to cover all the exams. The other thing I should say is that COVID has changed the numbers a bit. These are the most current and up-to-date numbers that I could find. Okay. So you might really think, oh, that's too high or that's too low. And I couldn't really find a number for all takers completely around the world. So these are just like the most popular ones. So you've got the Cambridge exams, and there's about 7 million Cambridge exams taken annually around the world. Now, there are a lot of different Cambridge English exams. First thing I would say. So This isn't necessarily like just the number that will take a specific Cambridge exam. This is the general number that will take Cambridge exams. But 7 million is quite a high number around the world, okay? There are 850,000 people who take the Trinity exams. All right, so that's how many Trinity exams are taken around. So we're up at sort of around 8 million. Then there's 2.3 million TOEFL exams. Okay, so you're looking at about sort of just for those, you're sort of approaching 10 million just for those ones. Okay, and there are others as well. So that's just those ones. Now, I have not specifically said IELTS. IELTS is probably the single most taken exam. And I'm going to go into, I've got a slide all about IELTS, but about 2.5 million people take IELTS. However, IELTS is owned by Cambridge. Well, it's actually owned by 3 companies. Cambridge is one of the companies that owns it. So I couldn't quite work out whether Cambridge are including the 2.5 million within that 7 million, or it could be 7 million plus another 2.5 million that take IELTS, if that makes sense. Okay, so a lot of people already just on those ones take English exams. As I said, there are plenty of others, and I'm going to talk about some of the others as well. Okay, so it's big business, and it's a big thing for a lot of people around the world. Okay, the number is also continuing to grow. It has grown throughout the 20 years that I've been teaching, and it is estimated to keep growing. Companies are putting a lot of money into it, and there's new companies sort of appearing every 2 or 3 years that are also creating exams and want a piece of the action, a piece of the money, and the piece of all these people that are taking the exams. Okay, so it's a big thing and it's important. Right, so let's talk a bit about the Cambridge English tests. Okay, they have many different tests. It's not just one test. Now, I've had students come up to me and they say to me, I want to take the Cambridge test. And you're like, okay, fine. Which Cambridge test do you want to take? And they get a bit shocked by that. They sort of think, no, I want to just take Cambridge. But actually, they maybe just have heard of the Cambridge tests and they think it's important to take the Cambridge tests. Okay, so what I always say to them is, what do you need or what do you want? And then they'll sort of then tell me, well, I want it to immigrate or emigrate, or they'll say, oh, I want it to be able to prove my certain level, or they will say, I want the B1 test, or I want the C1 test, or whatever it might be. So you've got to find out, if the student comes to you and says, I want a Cambridge test, then, you know, find out which one they want. If a school is employing you to take to teach the Cambridge test, one of the questions that you might want to ask is, what Cambridge test do you deliver? And then they'll probably say, well, which ones can you teach? And then probably the good answer there is, I can teach them all. But it would definitely help you to know more about what exact one they're doing. So the Cambridge tend to do their exams linked to the CEFR level, the Common European Framework of Reference. So that tends to be a letter and then a number, and that's the name of the test. And that's also the name of the level. So you will see things like the A1 test or the B2. Now, they have a fancy name that comes after it. So I don't know, for example, the A1 key test, for example, is what Cambridge is calling it. But really, the key thing to remember is that the A1 or the B1 or the A2 or the B2 level. And they do young learners exams, for example, that are aimed at lowish level candidates in terms of the A1, and then quite high level young learner exams, B2. And, you know, they're aimed for kids, so the topics are going to be a bit more kid friendly. The speaking exam might be a bit more sort of talking about topics that are relevant for kids, this kind of thing. So that's a specific exam for young learners. Then they do adult exams. The adult exams start from A2 and go up to C2 level. C2 is quite a high level. C2 is sort of the level that I'm talking at right now. So really quite a high level there. And the class that you would teach would be aimed at that specific level, or the student will come to you and say, teacher, I want to learn B1 Cambridge or whatever it might be. Okay, so just bear the A2, the numbers, the C2, whatever it might be in mind. A's are the lowest up to the C's, which are the highest. Okay, and then there's a number within that. Lots of stuff online about this if you want to learn more. They also do offer business exams specific for business English. They start at B1 and they go up to C1 level. So again, you might find that a student, you're teaching a business English class, and at the end of the business English class, the students will take a business English Cambridge exam at a certain level because they want to be able to prove that they've got a certain level of English in business English. Okay. Something again to keep in mind. So when you're sort of, before I was talking about the sort of 7 million that take it, you can see there's lots of kids within that. There's lots of adults, different ones in that. There's also the business English. So don't think, oh, 7 million people take the Cambridge exam. No, which one do they take within it? And the most common ones are the adult ones, then probably the young learner ones, and then the business English ones. Okay. And all of those are doing the 4 main skills. So reading, writing, listening, and speaking. There's some extra sort of grammar stuff in some of them because, the B2 exam is different from the B1 exam slightly in terms of the things that they have to do, in terms of the papers that they're using. So each sort of exam is slightly different. Okay. And the key thing for you is to know what the format is for each one, I think, because there's a lot of different Cambridge exams, and the format of the business ones will be different from the format of the general English ones, and be different from the format ones of the young learner ones. Okay, so just be aware of the different formats and how the student needs to go about doing it. Okay. I can see that there's some lovely questions in there. And yes, Evelyn, you'll be able to watch this again. We have on YouTube and Facebook lots and lots of different videos that we've done. Okay. Cooks, your question about how much it costs to enroll is different for each exam. That's something I'm going to talk at the end. Okay. Right. Let's talk a little bit now about the TOEFL test, which is quite a well-known, taken one around the world. Okay. Then I'm going to talk a bit about the IELTS, and then I'm going to talk about a few more. But let's talk now about the TOEFL test. Okay, so the first thing and this is quite a newish development for a lot of the exams, but TOEFL seem to have got there a little bit more quickly than other exam boards, is that you can actually take the TOEFL test at home, or you can take it at a centre. Now, you've got to be aware a little bit about how it's taken if they take it at home. So for example, they can't necessarily take it on a mobile. That might sound crazy, but some candidates might think that they can take it on a tablet, or they can take it on a mobile phone. No, you got to, there's rules around the type of software that they can use, the candidates at home, and that's around the security. Also, if they take it at home, they have an examiner like me, and I work for an examiner for different companies, who would look at the candidate through their webcam while they're taking the exam. Is that okay for the student? Are they happy with that, or would that put them off? Or would they actually prefer to go to an exam centre and take it? One thing you've got to be a bit aware of is that how tech able are the students. If you've got a student and they say, I don't know whether to take it at home, or I don't know whether to take it at a centre, well, say to them, are you quite tech able? Because believe it or not, quite a lot of students that come to me aren't really good at typing. They're not very good at controlling mouse and mice. And I don't think anybody has duplicate mice, do they? I don't know. They're not very good at controlling the mouse. And there are rules around what the test taker can have open on the screen for a lot of these home-based tests. So it's just something that you've got to be a bit aware of, okay? If they are not very tech able, and if they admit it, push them towards taking it at a centre with a paper-based one, maybe. Okay. There's also, for the TOEFL test, a young learner version. Primary and junior are the differences there, depending on the ages that they're going to take. So you might go abroad and teach the TOEFL test for young learners, and then a lot of kids would take it, or a parent might come to you and say, I want my kid to take the young learner version of TOEFL. Fantastic. Again, different versions compared to the adults ones. The TOEFL test does have quite an academic focus. So it is generally suited and was originally seen as for people that want to go and study at a university. And that's still the main reason why most people take tests, English tests, is because they want to go and study at a university. So it does have quite an academic focus in the way that the reading, for example, or the listening, that kind of thing. But one of the things that I personally like about the TOEFL test, and it might be something that will help you as a teacher, is that the students, the candidates, can take the best score over a 2-year period. So, for example, if they've got a high mark in reading from a year ago, but ever since then they've not been able to get such a high mark, but their speaking is higher in the next one, and the scoring is different, so they get quite like a 3-digit number for the TOEFL. So they can take whatever was the best score over the 2-year period, where some exam boards will only let them take it at once, and they'll only take the score from that one time. I hope I'm explaining this very well. Please put in the chat if I'm not. Basically, what I'm trying to say is they can take the best score from any time over 2 years and submit that score. So if their reading score was higher 6 months ago than the most recent test they've taken, the score from 6 months ago is eligible. They can then submit that to the university. Some tests don't do that. Okay, so I quite like that. It also has, I think, quite a lot of help for people who might have disabilities. So if you do have someone who might have learning disabilities, or someone who is disabled in some way, for example, they're blind or something like this, I think TOEFL is a very good choice for them. Okay, look into that. It's rare that this happens, but I've had blind students before in my class. It is also accepted by universities, but not necessarily for immigration. So some universities will make them take this TOEFL test to prove their academic English ability, but then the students would have to take a different test for immigration. So you've got to be aware of the circumstances of the student. You've also got to be aware of the country that they go into, because it makes a difference. You know, a new government comes in, the rules change. So you've got to be aware that they might have to take 2 tests with the TOEFL maybe to get into a university. Okay. Right. Let's talk a bit about IELTS now. So the IELTS test it's called IELTS, and students mispronounce it. They sometimes call it IELTS. They sometimes call it IELTS. But it's generally heard as the IELTS test, and it's called the International English Language Testing System. That's what it's short for. Okay. Now, it's really quite important, the IELTS test, for immigration and also for academia, because generally a school, for example, I've worked at universities in the UK where the candidates can prove their academic English ability by taking the IELTS test. They can also prove to the immigration authorities that they can come and get the visa for a country. And as far as I know, at the current moment of me recording this, it is eligible for the UK, for Australia, for Canada, for America. It's also eligible for countries such as Singapore and Japan and things like that. If the country, not for immigration for Japan, but for the universities for Japan, because that would let them to stay there as well with a correct visa. So it is quite an important one, and I think about 2.5 million people take it worldwide. The candidates can also take the academic test, or they can take a general test. So depending on the type of job that they're going for, they might be able to take the general IELTS test. So for example, I know that if a plumber or a hairdresser, for example, wants to move to Australia, they can take the general English test. They don't necessarily need to take the academic test. And the types of questions are different, especially in the reading and the listening. The speaking and the writing is, on the whole, the same. Writing is quite a bit different in one of the tasks, but generally, you know, it can help students that want to go abroad but necessarily don't want to go to university to take the IELTS test. Generally, they can do better than the academic test. As I said, the format is different depending on which one you're doing. Okay. What you need to ask your student is, what grade do they need? So with the Cambridge test, they would choose the one that they are aiming for. So the Cambridge, if they want a B2 qualification, they take the B2 test. With IELTS, everybody within the centre can have a different grade in mind that they need. So what you might say, they might say to you, well, teacher, I need 6.5. So you would hopefully have a group of students in your class that are aiming for roughly the same level. They're aiming for 7 or they're aiming for 6. If you've got a group of students and some are aiming for 5 and some are aiming for 6 or 7, it's quite difficult to teach them, because the kind of skills they need to have to get to that level is different depending on the grade that they want. So that's just something in mind. Mixed ability classes can be difficult with IELTS, all right? So ask them what they need and try and find out what grade they need. And then your teaching would change to that grade, really. Okay. IELTS is slowly moving online. So I know in the future they have some plans to allow students to take it in their homes, for example. Some test centres have a bank of computers where the candidate will go in and take it on computer, typing. However, a lot of the exams, the majority are still written by hand. So it's something to think about. Is your student really good at writing with their hands? You know, the handwriting. Are they quick? Or do they maybe have messy handwriting and they're really good at typing? Maybe move them towards the computer-based ones. Does depend where they are in the world. Okay. Trinity exams. And I can see those questions that are coming in. I'm definitely going to get to them. But let's talk about the Trinity exams. They are divided into two, which is the GESE exams, which are very popular with young learners around the world. The GESE exams are one of the big young learner ones, and that's where they do a spoken English sort of only test. They don't tend to do a writing and a reading and a listening. They tend to just do a spoken GESE test. And then there's also the ISE exams, which are called the Integrated Skills in English, which has a reading, a writing, a listening, and a speaking component to it. And I really like this suite of exams. I quite like students to take it. I quite like teaching it, that kind of thing. The speaking, one of the reasons why is because the speaking is quite student-centered. So, for example, they quite often are allowed to choose the topic that they want to talk about, whereas in other exams they're given a topic to talk about. So if you've got some young learners and they want and you've got a 13-year-old boy really into football, he can choose for the first half of the exam to talk about football. I think that's quite good. I think that's just a natural, helps them to talk about it instead of maybe doing a different exam where they've got to talk about something that they've really got no experience about. So I think the speaking is more student-centered. The listening side of things is also verbally answered. So a lot of listening exams, they listen to something and then they write down the answers, and that is marked by a computer or it's marked by someone. The Trinity exams, they are answered verbally. So the examiner would ask them a question, they would verbally answer. Okay. So I quite like that. Some students might not like that. You've also got to be a bit aware of Trinity where it's accepted. It's slightly less accepted for universities. Some universities do take it, but not as many universities around the world take it as IELTS or Cambridge. Okay. The students and the teachers choose the level and choose the exam they want to go to. So it's not like IELTS where you all people in the same room could get a different grade, a different level. Within Trinity, they say, well, I'm going to take the B1 or I'm going to take the B2 or I'm going to take the C1 exam. Okay. Going to talk a little bit about English for specific purpose exams. So you've got the academic tests. I'm going to sort of try and go a little bit more quickly through some of these, but you've got the academic tests such as the Pearson test of English academic, quite often called the PTE, but that does involve some other exams. Slightly not as well taken, but it is seen as quite a good one for academic. English to be proven. There's also the TEEP test in the academic English things. Now, a lot of these are the TEEP. A lot of it is taken actually at university once they're already there. Generally, the Pearson test is taken before. So again, it might be something that a candidate would come to you and say, we want to learn to pass these tests, maybe, or the school will tell you you're going to do a class in this one. There's business tests. You got the Cambridge business tests, which are, as I said, from B1 level up. So that would focus a lot on business English vocabulary, business English writing skills, emails, I don't know, marketing, that kind of thing. You've also got lingua skill, which is aimed at companies generally, not individuals. So a company would say, we want to take the whole of we want to test the level of our whole workforce, maybe. And they would do the lingua skill test. There's also the TOEIC exam, and it's not, some people call it a business English exam. It's more like an international communication exam. That's what they call it. So it's really for trying to get people talking to each other in an international setting. So a Chinese person talking to a Japanese person, or Brazilian talking to an Indian person, for example. And a lot of those transactions are in business. So that's what it's called. There's also a medical English test, a medical English exam called the OET test. Was really, really popular pre-COVID. The numbers were really sort of growing in it. So that was for doctors and nurses that want to move to the UK, for example, and work in the UK. They would do that, the OET test, and they would be tested in medical English. However, they can also do the IELTS test. So it was growing in pop. I don't know how popular it's been since COVID, but it was definitely, the numbers were growing in that before. Okay, so if you have nurses or doctors, you might want to push them towards the OET test. You might want to start teaching it yourself. I've never taught it myself, but it could be fun. Now, there's also country specific tests, and you've got the STEP ICON test, which is basically a test that is used in Japan to test school kids and also to test the level of English of teachers. Okay, so if you're going to go work in Japan, could be something you'll go teach. Going to go work in Malaysia, you might teach the MUIT exam, which is the Malaysian University Entrance Test. They basically give that to test the level of English of people going to university in Malaysia. You've got the STEP, which is the Saudi Arabian English Language Test. That's not what it stands for, but that's just what it is. It's just called the STEP test. Again, that's for Saudi Arabian students that want to do an English course in Saudi Arabia. So they might want to do, I don't know, English literature, something like that. Going to go to Canada, you might, or you've got people that want to move to Canada. They might take something called the Canadian Academic English Language Assessment Test. That would test their for Canadian universities, and then there's others for other countries, around the world. So just be aware that if you're going to go work abroad, there might be this one. So if you're going to go and you're going to apply to go work, for example, in Malaysia, you might want to, before the interview, brush up a little bit on the Malaysian University Entrance Test, because that's something that you might get asked about in the interview. How do students choose which one they take? So countries tend to have a tradition in a certain exam. So I know, for example, in Spain, Cambridge exams are really quite popular. TOEFL, TOEIC are generally quite popular in East Asia. And there's no sort of reason for that, but apart from maybe that exam board got in there before the other exams for that country. So just Cambridge, for example, might have been operating a lot longer in Spain than, I don't know, the Oxford English test, for example. So there is a sort of historical tradition. And it's, is that a good thing or a bad thing? I don't know, but that tends to be what it is. You also might find that students choose an exam because they think that this one is easier. They've heard that this one is easier than the other. I don't think that's true about all tests. I think that nowadays all tests are pretty much level in terms of their grade, and I don't think one is easier than the others, but that's what they think. What it might be is that one suits their personality or the personality of that culture more than others, if there's more of a speaking focus instead of a writing focus, for example. All right. However, the number one reason for them to choose, it depends on their destination and where they're trying to get to. Does the country that they go into accept this test for immigration? Tends to be the first thing. And then what level do they need to get to that? And or secondly, do they need a specific test for a job or a specific test for a university? It does depend on their destination, what they're going to get to. Okay. And there's also a theme about marketing. Does the company that owns the test do a lot of marketing in that country? If they do, more students might take it. There's also economic reasons. You know, there might be ones that are sort of a bit cheaper than others. There might be ones where, I don't know, like a famous YouTuber has said, this is the test to take. That means lots of people take it. Okay. COVID has had a big influence on tests, and there have been ones that have increased in popularity, such as the Duolingo test, English test, in COVID times, because that was really set up to be taken at home when all the centres around the exam taking centres were closed. Students still wanted to take the test. They took it at home, and the ones that were more set up for that, the numbers just rocketed. Okay. And COVID will continue to have an influence, because if countries go into mini lockdowns or things like that, or some companies start to allow the candidates to take it at home, more people will take it. So something to bear in mind, all right? What do you need to know as a teacher? I'm going to come to these questions in a minute. I'm almost done with my slides, but thank you very much. But what do you need to know as a teacher? Exam teaching can open a lot of doors for you, either if you're self-employed or if you're going to go work for someone. Okay, you might see jobs which are talking about exam teaching, and if you know about that, and if you can prove that, and if you can talk about it, you're more likely to get the job. It's quite lucrative for schools, exam classes, and they want these teachers who can teach it. Okay, they want this teacher who can take it, who can teach it. I'm sorry for my grammar mistake there. They want a specific teacher who can teach that exam, because students tend to pay more for exam courses than they do for general English courses. So schools like to run them. Okay, so if I was you, and if you're new to teaching, or you've been teaching for a while and you want to start teaching more about exam classes, I would think about some specialized courses such as the one that we offer. We offer a 40-hour exam prep course, and that can really help you to show prospective employers that you are suitable for the job. Okay, so think about some specialized courses. Exam skills when you teach are quite important. So you're not necessarily teaching English, you're also teaching how to attack that particular exam. Do you do this bit first? Do you do that bit first? How long should you spend on a question? What is the examiner looking for? What do you need to show in order to do that? Okay. The marking load can be quite high for these courses. So you might be teaching lots of speaking, lovely, listening and reading, but there also might be quite a lot of writing marking that goes with it as well. So something to be aware of, that if you're going to do it, you might have more time marking after classes, which some other teachers who are not teaching exam classes might not have. But the satisfaction levels can be really quite high for these ones. Okay, really, really nice to get the students through these exams. You can really help them to change their life, that kind of thing. If you're going to go work abroad, your school will probably tell you what tests to teach. So they will say to you, right, you're going to go to Japan, you're going to welcome to this job interview. My school runs lots of TOEFL classes. You will be teaching the TOEFL test. Fine. Or you will be teaching the IELTS test. So quite often the school the schools don't tend to offer lots of different tests. They tend to sort of be specialized in one test, which makes the most money for the school, basically. So that tends to be what happens when you go abroad to teach, right? But if you're self-employed, you might want to you might want to first of all specialize in one test because it will help you with your niche. But also you might get students that say to you, I want to take a test, but I don't know which one to test, which one to take. And if you know all the tests, then you can sort of suggest to them the best one to take. Okay, so it's good to have that general knowledge about lots and lots of tests. Okay, thank you. I'm sorry if I went on and on and on then about loads, but I'm definitely going to get to some questions now, so thank you very much. Okay, so let's just all that lovely chat at the start. Where's the first question? Carol, hello. Do you need a university degree to be able to teach for one of these exams, or just a TEFL certification? You don't need a university degree to teach that specific exam. Okay, so the TEFL certification is the most important thing. The next thing that might be important is to do like one of those specialized modules, like I said, and see if that will help you to stand out. You don't need a degree to teach them. TEFL certification is the most important thing. However, you might need a degree to go and work abroad in that specific country. So that's what the degree is for, basically. It's for the immigration purposes, not necessarily to teach that class. Hope that answers your question, Carol. Sarah, how do you access the syllabus? A really good question. So each exam has its own official website. And on that website will be the syllabus, will be like the topics that are covered. And that's the key thing that you need to look at first. If you're going to teach these classes, that you're covering all the topics and you're covering all the skills. Now, within those skills, for example, within the reading, there might be specific ones that may come up on crime or the environment or law, would that be crime, or business, for example. You need to generally cover that in your classes, and that depends on whether you are going to be making your own materials, can take a lot of time, or if you're going to be teaching from a textbook, which is hopefully a good textbook will cover all those topics. Okay, so your textbook tends to give you the syllabus. Okay, if you don't have a textbook, then hopefully the school you're going to work for will give you a syllabus and say, right, you're going to cover this. You're going to cover crime and reading in crime in week 1. Week 2, you're going to cover education and speaking, for example. Okay. Ellen, hello. How are you, Ellen? Good to see you. As a tutor, if I want to teach students or adults to prepare for Cambridge IELTS, do I need to take a specifically pass? No. You don't need to have taken that test and passed it in order to teach it. What I always do whenever I get an English test is I download it and I take it myself. Okay, I don't give IELTS 150 quid or whatever it is to take the test. The test could be expensive, but I download the test. I look at it as if I was a test taker. What would I have to do? Okay, and I think that's really good teaching. Is first of all is for you to take the test, put yourself in the position of the test taker, mark it yourself, and see which ones you got right and which ones you got wrong, because you probably will get a couple wrong. And that way it can sort of start to think, right, okay, I did this, I should have done this. I'm going to tell my students to do this. You don't need it. However, if you're a non-native speaker, sometimes you can prove your English ability by taking the IELTS test, for example. There are others, or one of the others. So if you can take the IELTS test and get sort of quite a high level, 8+ or C2 level in some of the other tests, that can generally show that you have native speaking ability, and that might allow you to apply for any jobs you see where they say non-native speakers don't apply, if that makes sense, or if the job says native speakers only. So it's worth doing it to show your English ability. Immigration is a different thing. If you're a non-native speaker and a certain country won't take you on for immigration, that's different, but it can be useful to show your English ability if you're a non-native speaker. Okay. Ash, can you present a 7+ general IELTS score instead of a degree to get a TOEFL job? Right. It's not equivalent to a degree. It's not. So what you would need the first thing I would say that probably most want you to take the academic IELTS because it's more difficult. So that's something to bear in mind, Ash. You might need to go and take the academic score. Right. The other thing I would say to you is 7 is fantastic. It shows you're a really good speaker, user of English. You know, really quite a high level. However, to get to sort of native level, they might be expecting you to have 8 or 9. Really, really difficult to get 9. So just be aware, Ash, if you see a job advertised where they're sort of saying native speakers only, ask them and email them and say, look, okay, I might not have English as my very first language, but I've been studying English since I was 3 or 4 years old, whatever it might be. And look, I can prove to you that I've got IELTS 8, IELTS 9. Does that allow me to apply? So that's just something to be aware of, Ash. Okay, so a very high level pass might allow you to do that. Okay, good luck, Ash. Let us know how it goes. I hope it answers your question. FJ Soul, hello. Oh, you've got your question over two things. Let me try and read this one. You have a bachelor's degree in architecture. Very nice. You've worked in Canada, Portugal. Okay, you want to go teach English in Portugal? Okay, fine. Next question. The PT salary isn't great, so plan to teach remotely. Right, that's an interesting one. So I would, if I was you, FJ, and you're in Portugal, I would try and get some. If you're going to be in Portugal, I would advertise myself locally as a teacher. See if you can get some one-to-one students, because that tends to be quite well paid. Or if you can get your own little groups, like you can find 2 students that you teach 2-on-1, you might be able to earn more. You might be able to earn more than going to work at a school. Okay, first things. Second thing is, yes, online is fantastic, and we've done lots and lots of webinars about online. Starting out, the online wage is pretty good, but maybe not as much as you would really want, FJ, for someone that's maybe an architect. That's what I would say. So have a look at a webinar we did a couple of weeks ago where we interviewed an online teacher. Alan, I think if you could put in the chat, I've forgotten the lady's name who the interview was, but look back. She talks about how she teaches online and see if that's for you. What I always suggest to people who want to work online is work for a company and also build up your own business as your own self-employed online teacher, because that tends to be where you'll make more money long term. So FJ, don't think it's an either or. I would go down the route of maybe working online for a company, trying to find your own students locally in Portugal, maybe work for a language school in Portugal as well. You could maybe teach a bit of business English. That might be a bit more lucrative with your degree, FJ. Don't stick yourself one. Try and use a few. Okay. Hope that answers your question, FJ. Good luck with it. I wish I could go live in Portugal. Sean, hello. What is a good proficiency test to offer to prospective clients for a self-employed teacher to find out their level of English? Well, that's a good one. So, right. So there, Sean, if you are trying to find out their level in order to teach them, you're going to do something called a placement test, which is slightly different from a proficiency test. And I haven't really gone into proficiency tests here. What I would suggest is you look back a couple of weeks ago. I spoke about needs analysis. That might be something that will help you with that. Cambridge offer placement tests, and you might get your student to do a placement test, and then that will then show you what level you need to teach at to advance them. What you're sort of saying there is, and I think I hope I've answered your question there, Sean, but if you're thinking about what test to teach in order to get self-employed students, what I would say to you is work out, have a look online and see which ones aren't covered that much. So there's lots and lots of online IELTS teachers. There's lots and lots of Cambridge online teachers. Are there lots of Trinity online teachers? I'm not so sure. And that might be a good niche for you to teach. Now, you might think, but there's less people that take Trinity. Yes, but there's more people looking to get students in Trinity. So if you can be Sean Smith, the Trinity teacher, could you get more work that way? Maybe, all right? But to find out the level, you're looking at a placement test. And if you Google placement tests, you'll be able to, you'll find lots of stuff about that. Okay, there is a difference between placement tests and proficiency tests. Placement tests are what are taken at the start. Proficiency tests are what are taken at the end. Sean, let me know if that doesn't answer your question. Please, any other questions about tests, please put them in the chat. And I'll get around to them in the next few minutes. Ellen, yeah, you want to look into the OET test. That's a good one, Ellen. So Google the OET test. They've got a really nice website where it says all about them. And I think if you've got a bit of a medical background, that's something that you might want to get into. It might be something that you find quite interesting. Whenever I looked at teaching it, I didn't really have the medical knowledge. You've got to have a bit of medical knowledge. Okay, I hope that works out for you. Sean, no problem. FJ, no problem at all. Listen, I want to thank you all for tuning in on this this webinar. Okay, here at the TEFL Org, we have a deal on which you might, if you think that you want to get into exam prep, I really recommend you look on our website. If you go to the TEFL courses bit here, you can see there's a section on the 40-hour teaching exam preparation classes, which will take you to this website here. Lots of stuff about that, about what you'll learn, tutor support from someone like me. You know, you've got 2 months, all this kind of thing here. We've also got a bit of a sale on at the moment as well. So, you know, really good stuff that will help you stand out if you're going to apply for jobs. It can also really help you to offer good quality classes to students if you're going to be self-employed. Okay. So that's something to think about. Lots of nice things there to sort of think about. We also sort of have a blog section. So if you go to the blog bit here, we have some more information here about, if you type into the blogs bit there, exam, for example, you'll get stuff that comes up where we mention exams, because it is sort of talked about a lot all over the world. So something that's worth thinking about there. Okay. Thank you very much for joining me today. If you've got any more questions, please send us a message on Facebook. If you like this video, obviously like it, all the usual social media stuff. If you're on YouTube, we've got lots of other videos. On Facebook, we've got lots of other videos as well in the past. So please go back and look at them. We're going to be offering lots more of these videos in the next few weeks where we're going to interview some people, this kind of thing. So really hope that you'll find one that's interested for you. Thank you for tuning in. Have a good weekend, and I'll see you again soon. Bye.